It started as a quiet morning patrol through the old cemetery, until Rex suddenly broke into a wild, furious bark. The barking grew frantic, desperate, almost fearful. "What is it, boy?" Mark asked, his heart pounding, but the canine wouldn't stop. His instinct screamed louder than words. Then Mark heard it. Knock, knock, knock. 3 faint sounds from beneath the soil. The ground shifted, a low moan rising from below. Every hair on Mark's neck stood on end. "Dear God," he whispered, stepping back. The grave was moving. Something, or someone, was alive under there, and what they unearthed would haunt everyone who witnessed it. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The morning sun hung low over Greenwood Cemetery, its light filtering through a thin veil of mist. Officer Mark adjusted his uniform as he stepped out of the patrol car, the gravel crunching softly beneath his boots. Beside him, his canine partner, Rex, a powerful German shepherd with years of service, sniffed the air, ears pricked and alert. Something about the place felt wrong. The air was still yet heavy, as if holding its breath. They had been called after reports of strange disturbances overnight. People claimed to hear scratching sounds near one of the newer graves. Some even said they saw the earth shift. Mark didn't believe in ghost stories, but he trusted one thing more than anything else: Rex's instincts. The caretaker, an old man with tired eyes and trembling hands, met them near the gate. "It's that grave up on the hill," he said, pointing toward a mound of fresh earth. "No animals go near it. Even the birds avoid it," his voice faltered. "I've been working here 30 years, officer. Never seen anything like it." As they walked through the rows of gravestones, the faint scent of damp soil and flowers filled the air. Rex's nose twitched. He slowed his pace, tail stiff, muscles tensing. Mark noticed it immediately. "Easy, boy," he murmured, resting a hand on the dog's back. But Rex didn't relax. His gaze was fixed ahead, locked on the single grave that stood apart from the rest. Mark's steps grew cautious. The mound looked too uneven, the earth slightly raised as if it had been disturbed. He frowned. "When was this burial?" he asked. The caretaker hesitated. 2 days ago, a woman, young, a strange unease crawled up Mark's spine. The cemetery was silent except for the faint rustle of leaves. Rex gave a low growl, deep and warning. The hair on his neck stood on end. Mark exhaled slowly, glancing at his partner. "What do you sense, boy?" Rex's eyes narrowed, his body lowering into a defensive stance. Then out of nowhere, he barked once, sharp and furious. The echo tore through the quiet cemetery like a gunshot. Mark's pulse quickened as Rex's bark echoed through the cemetery, bouncing off the cold marble stones. The German shepherd's body was tense, his fur standing like bristles along his back. "Rex, heel," Mark commanded, but the dog didn't obey. Instead, Rex lunged forward, claws tearing through the grass, growling toward the fresh grave like something alive was buried beneath it. The caretaker stumbled back, startled. "What's wrong with him?" he cried, clutching his cap. Mark didn't answer. He'd worked with Rex for years, through drug busts, rescue missions, and crime scenes. But he'd never seen his partner like this. This wasn't aggression. This was panic. Rex barked again, louder this time, circling the mound as if guarding it. The earth trembled faintly, or maybe Mark imagined it. He crouched, eyes narrowing. "Easy, boy," he whispered, moving closer. The soil looked freshly disturbed, still moist, uneven in strange patches. A small indentation appeared near the top, like air escaping from beneath. Mark's radio crackled, breaking the silence. "Unit 27, status report?" a voice asked. He hesitated, then replied, "Possible grave tampering. Sending coordinates. Need backup." Rex kept barking, paws digging frantically. Clumps of dirt flew as his claws tore deeper. "Stop!" Mark grabbed the leash, but the dog resisted with all his strength. His nose pressed against the soil, sniffing, whining, then growling again, low, guttural, urgent. The caretaker crossed himself, whispering, "Lord have mercy." Mark's breath hitched. He felt a faint vibration under his boot, like something moving below. He froze, staring at the mound. Then the ground shifted again, unmistakably this time. A ripple moved through the dirt like a breath from underneath. Rex snarled, stepping back, barking wildly. Mark's heart pounded. "There's someone down there." His voice broke in disbelief. The caretaker's face turned pale. "But that's impossible. She's been dead 2 days. Mark looked at Rex, whose eyes blazed with certainty. He didn't doubt it anymore. Something, or someone, was alive beneath that grave. Mark froze, every muscle in his body locking as the grave trembled again. It wasn't a trick of the light or his imagination this time. The soil moved. A shiver crawled down his spine. Graves didn't shift like that. The caretaker stumbled backward, shaking his head in disbelief. That's not possible, he stammered. But Rex didn't hesitate. The canine barked furiously, pawing at the earth, dirt flying in all directions. Mark's heart pounded against his chest. He stepped closer, crouching beside the grave. "Easy, boy," he whispered, but even his voice quivered. The ground pulsed faintly beneath his glove, a soft vibration like a heartbeat buried under layers of soil. His breath caught. "Someone's down there," he murmured. He pressed his ear closer to the mound, blocking out the wind. For a moment there was only silence. Then faintly, impossibly, he heard it. A weak knock. 3 slow taps from beneath the ground. Mark jerked upright, stumbling backward, eyes wide. The caretaker gasped, crossing himself again. "Oh Lord, that can't be real." Mark grabbed his radio. "Dispatch, this is Officer Mark Daniels, Greenwood Cemetery. I need immediate backup and medical response. Possible live burial." His voice cracked with urgency. Rex barked louder now, digging frantically, his claws caked with dirt. Each bark grew more desperate, more commanding, as if he was urging the humans to move faster. Mark snatched a shovel lying nearby and began to dig with trembling hands. Every scoop of soil made his chest tighten. The knocking had grown weaker now, slower, fainter. "Hang on," he shouted, his voice trembling. "We're coming." The ground shifted once more, the mound sinking slightly as air escaped through the loosened soil. Rex whined, pawing harder. Mark's hands bled from gripping the shovel. His heart thundered. Someone had been buried alive, and time was running out. Mark's breath came in sharp bursts as he dug, soil flying with every desperate movement. Rex clawed beside him, his growls low and urgent, the sound of a creature fighting against time itself, the air filled with the thick scent of earth and sweat. Mark's hands stung, blisters forming as his shovel struck something solid, wood. His heart lurched. "I found it," he gasped. The caretaker hovered nearby, pale as ash, wringing his hands. The ground had caved slightly, revealing a corner of a coffin buried far too shallow. Rex whined and pressed his snout against the exposed wood, barking wildly. Mark knelt, pressing his ear against the surface. Knock, knock. 2 faint thuds answered. His pulse spiked. "She's alive," he whispered. "Dear God, she's alive." He slammed the radio. "This is Officer Daniels. Send everything you've got. We have a live burial victim." His voice trembled with urgency. From somewhere far off, the faint wail of sirens began to rise. Rex refused to stop digging, even when Mark pulled him back. The dog's claws tore at the wood until splinters flew. Mark grabbed a crowbar from his patrol car and jammed it under the lid, muscles straining. The wood creaked but didn't give. "Come on," he hissed through gritted teeth. "Don't you die on me now." Finally, with a sharp crack, the lid splintered open. A rush of stale air escaped, carrying the faint scent of decay and life. Inside, a pale hand twitched. Mark froze, staring as a faint moan rose from the darkness. "She's breathing." The caretaker stumbled back, tears flooding his eyes. "Sweet Lord." Mark reached down, brushing dirt from the woman's face. She was ghostly white, lips trembling, eyes fluttering open just for a second before closing again. "Hang on, ma'am," he whispered, voice breaking. "You're safe now." Rex whined softly, pressing his head against the coffin's edge as if comforting her. In that moment, amid the broken soil and chaos, Mark realized this wasn't just a rescue. It was a miracle clawed back from the grip of death itself. The distant wail of sirens grew louder as Mark and Rex kept digging like their lives depended on it. Soil flew in every direction, covering their uniforms, their faces, their hands. The woman's breathing was faint but still there, non-fragile, slipping. Mark could hear it now, the shallow gasps echoing from the coffin. "Stay with me," he shouted, voice raw. "Help's coming." Rex pawed furiously, refusing to rest. His chest heaved, his eyes blazing with focus. Mark's muscles burned, but he didn't stop. Each second stretched into eternity. He could almost feel the heartbeat slowing beneath the earth. Come on," he muttered, shoveling faster. Finally, red lights flashed through the trees. Paramedics and 2 more officers sprinted toward them with stretchers and equipment. "What's the situation?" One called out, "She's alive!" Mark gasped. "We need her out now." Within seconds, the team joined the dig. Hands, shovels, even bare fingers clawed through the dirt. The coffin lid cracked wider and a rush of air escaped. The woman's face appeared again, pale, streaked with soil, her chest barely moving. A medic pressed 2 fingers to her neck. "Weak pulse," he shouted. "She's fading." Mark dropped to his knees beside her. "You hear that?" he whispered, voice trembling. "We've got you. Don't give up." Rex whined softly, nosing the woman's shoulder as if urging her to breathe. For a second her lips parted, a fragile sound, half gasp, half cry. Mark's throat tightened. She was fighting. "Get the oxygen ready," a medic barked. Tubes and masks appeared. Another officer tore open a trauma kit. Every movement was chaos, urgency, and prayer. As they lifted her onto the stretcher, Mark looked down at Rex, the dog's fur matted with dirt, his sides heaving, eyes fixed on the woman. "Good work, partner," Mark whispered, voice breaking. "You found her in time." But deep inside he couldn't shake the dread creeping up his spine. How long had she been buried alive, and why? The paramedics worked with practiced urgency, their voices overlapping in the chaos. "Pulse weak but steady," one shouted, pressing an oxygen mask over the woman's face. Mark stood back, chest heaving, trying to steady his own breathing. His gloves were torn, hands trembling, but he couldn't look away. He'd seen rescues before on car crashes, fires, shootings, but never something like this. Never a life pulled straight from the grave. Rex sat beside him, dirt covering his fur, eyes locked on the woman. His ears twitched at every sound, every gasp she made, as if waiting for confirmation she was truly alive. The paramedics checked her vitals, wrapping her in blankets and connecting wires. One of them looked up at Mark, disbelief written all over his face. "If you hadn't found her now, she wouldn't have made it another hour," he said. Mark exhaled shakily, his voice low. "It wasn't me. It was him." He nodded toward Rex, who let out a soft, exhausted whine. As the paramedics lifted the stretcher, the woman's eyelids fluttered. Her lips moved faintly beneath the mask, and barely a whisper, but Mark caught it. "Help. Me." The word sent chills down his spine. She wasn't just fighting for life. She was terrified of something. The caretaker stepped forward, trembling. "Officer, she's the one buried 2 days ago. I saw the death certificate myself." His voice wavered. "How could she be alive?" Mark didn't answer. He didn't have one. He watched the ambulance doors swing open as the medics loaded her inside. The siren wailed, echoing through the graveyard as the vehicle sped away. Rex stood motionless, tail low, staring after it. Mark knelt beside him, resting a dirt-covered hand on his back. "You saved her, buddy," he murmured. The wind rustled the trees, scattering petals from nearby graves. For a long moment, neither man nor dog moved. The cemetery was silent again, but the silence felt different now. Not haunted, just waiting for the truth to rise from the ground. Hours later, the sterile lights of St. Mary's Hospital flickered softly as Mark stood outside the recovery ward. Rex lay at his feet, finally resting, though his eyes opened every time footsteps echoed down the hall. The rescue was over, but the mystery had only begun. Through the glass, Mark watched the woman, the one they dug from her own grave, resting beneath white sheets, an oxygen tube tracing her pale face. Her chest rose and fell faintly, proof that life, against all odds, still lingered inside her. The doctors had called it a miracle. But Mark knew better. Miracles didn't bark their way out of cemeteries. When she finally stirred awake, a nurse called him in. Mark approached quietly, removing his cap. Her voice was weak, trembling. "Where am I?" "You're safe," Mark said gently. "You were buried. We found you, my dog found you," her eyes widened, tears welling. "I remember hearing sounds above me, voices. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. I couldn't move." She swallowed hard, trembling. "I thought I was dead." The attending doctor stepped in, clipboard in hand. She suffered a condition called cataleptic paralysis. Her body mimicked death completely. No pulse, no breath movement detectable without deep testing. Rare, but it happens. He shook his head in disbelief. Whoever examined her made a grave mistake. Mark exchanged a look with Rex, who lifted his head at the mention of her voice. The woman's eyes softened when she saw him. That dog? He wouldn't stop barking, would he? Mark smiled faintly. He never does when someone's in trouble. She reached out a trembling hand, Rex stood and pressed his nose gently against her fingers, his eyes calm now, no longer frantic. The woman's tears fell freely. "He saved me," she whispered. I could feel him above me. "I knew someone was there." Mark nodded quietly. "He heard your heartbeat when no one else could." Outside the hospital window, dawn began to rise, soft, gold, and alive, just like the woman who had returned from her own grave. 2 days later, Mark sat in his office, replaying the case over and over in his mind. The report said the woman's name was Elena Moore, 31 years old, declared dead after collapsing at home. The official cause, cardiac arrest, but the details didn't add up. Something about the husband's statement felt off, too rehearsed, too polished. And Rex, who usually relaxed after a resolved case, remained on edge. Every time Mark mentioned the husband's name, the dog's ears twitched and a low growl rumbled in his chest. Mark trusted that instinct more than any piece of paper. "You're trying to tell me something, aren't you, partner?" he murmured, scratching Rex's ear. The shepherd only stared, eyes sharp and alert. At noon, Mark visited the hospital to check on Elena. She was recovering slowly, though the nightmares hadn't stopped. "I keep seeing his face," she whispered. "He stood by my hospital bed before the burial. He was smiling." Her voice quivered. "I thought he was grieving, but now I think he wanted me gone." Mark's stomach turned. "Did your husband have life insurance on you?" She hesitated, then nodded. "A large one. He convinced me to sign it a few months ago. He said it was for security." That was all Mark needed to hear. He left the hospital with his jaw clenched, Rex pacing beside him like a shadow. Back at headquarters, he requested the case files and medical reports. Something strange appeared. The attending physician's signature was smudged, almost forged. The husband had been the one who identified her body, pushing for a quick burial the same night. Rex growled again, nose pressed to the husband's photo lying on the desk. Mark stared at it, feeling the first spark of anger ignite. "Looks like this isn't over," he muttered, standing abruptly. He grabbed his coat, clipped on Rex's leash, and headed for the door. "Let's pay Mr. Moore a visit, partner. Time to find out what he's really burying." The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the quiet suburban street as Mark parked his patrol car in front of the Moore residence. The house looked peaceful. White picket fence, trimmed hedges, the kind of place that whispered normalcy. But Mark had learned long ago, evil didn't always hide in dark alleys. Sometimes it smiled behind clean curtains. Rex jumped out first, tail stiff, nose twitching. His hackles rose instantly. "Easy, boy," Mark murmured, but the warning came too late. The German shepherd growled low and deep as the front door opened. Mr. Moore stepped out, feigning surprise. "Officer!" "What brings you here?" His tone was polite, but his eyes, cold and calculating, told another story. Mark studied him carefully. "Just following up on your wife's case. She's recovering." The man froze for a heartbeat. "Recovering?" His forced smile faltered. "That's impossible. She was dead." Rex barked sharply, lunging forward. The man instinctively stepped back, panic flickering in his gaze. Mark held Rex's leash firm, his eyes narrowing. "You seem nervous, Mr. Moore. Something bothering you?" The man stammered. No, of course not. I'm just shocked." Mark's voice hardened. "Funny thing. The doctor who signed her death certificate doesn't exist in hospital records. Neither does the lab that ran her toxicology test." He took a slow step forward. "So tell me, who helped you bury your wife alive?" The color drained from Moore's face. Sweat beaded on his forehead. Rex barked again, one loud, furious sound that shattered the man's composure. "I didn't mean for it to happen," Moore shouted suddenly, his voice cracking. "She wasn't supposed to wake up. It was supposed to look like a heart attack. I just needed the insurance." Mark's stomach turned as officers moved in from behind the car, cuffing the trembling man. Rex sat back, eyes fixed on him, silent but watchful. As they dragged the husband away, Mark looked down at his partner. "You knew the whole time, didn't you?" Rex gave a small huff, tail flicking once. Justice delivered with a bark. A week later, the sky above Greenwood Cemetery glowed gold as the sun dipped behind the trees. The air was calm this time, no whispers, no shifting soil, no echoes of panic. Just peace. Mark walked slowly along the gravel path with Rex beside him, his loyal partner trotting proudly, his fur brushed clean, his badge gleaming in the fading light. They stopped near the grave that had once terrified everyone. Now it stood quiet, its marker replaced with a simple plaque that read, "For those who found life again." Behind them, footsteps crunched softly. Mark turned and saw Elena approaching, wrapped in a light shawl, her face still pale but her eyes alive with gratitude. Rex's ears perked, tail wagging gently. The woman knelt beside him, tears welling as she stroked his head. "I don't remember much from that day," she whispered, "but I'll never forget this bark. It kept me alive." Rex licked her hand and she smiled through her tears. Mark stood silently, his throat tight. He'd seen countless cases end in tragedy, but this was different. "He doesn't give up," he said softly. "That's what makes him special." Elena looked up at him, her eyes shimmering. "You both saved me," she said. "You didn't just dig me out, you gave me back everything." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small medal with an engraving. "To Rex, the dog who heard life." She pinned it gently onto his collar. The shepherd sat tall, chest puffed out as if he understood the honor. Mark smiled faintly, patting his partner's back. "You earned it, buddy." As the sun sank lower, painting the world in amber light, Elena whispered a final thank you and placed a single white rose on the grave. The wind stirred softly through the trees. Mark turned to leave, Rex walking proudly at his side. The case was closed, but the echo of that furious bark still lingered in his mind, a sound that had defied death itself. And as they walked into the setting sun, Mark couldn't help but think, sometimes angels don't have wings. Sometimes they have paws.